stable and diversified operations, 6 mines in Kazakhstan, 1 mine in USA, as well as we have a development project in Tanzania. UraniumOne is a low-cost producer thanks to its Tier 1 assets in Kazakhstan, and it hasn't been just a given fact to achieve low costs. The teams at the mine sites have been working thoroughly through innovation, efficiency, and safe operations to achieve that result. The company also has strong financial and balance sheet, and in fact, if you look at our assets today, we have about $2 billion in assets in USD dollars, around 400 million in 400 million in revenue based on 2016 numbers. But when it comes to resources, I think UraniumOne stands as a very prominent player on the market with the long-term plans, and our total M&I resource base today is about 230 million pounds of measured and indicated resources, with about 200 plus million in inferred category. When it comes to employees, we have about 2,400 employees across the globe, and around 2,300 of those employees actually at the mine site. And more importantly, UraniumOne mining assets have a world-class performance in safety, and that was achieved through innovations and best practices at each mine site that we have, including Kazakhstan primarily. And one part of it is to mine the uranium, the second part of it is to sell the uranium, and we have been supplying nuclear power plants across the globe and have a long-term and mid-term portfolio of clients which we serve on a regular basis. And on the regional presence, we do operate our operations through many offices. We have offices in Canada, Europe, Kazakhstan, Africa, and US, which helps to keep our global asset portfolio intact. This slide really to provide you with a high-level overview of our current mining uranium assets portfolio. And you can see that we own JV stakes in 5 JV stakes in Kazakhstan. We have South Inkai, Agdala, Agpastau, Karatau, the Rechny mine, and Carson mine as part of our portfolio. In US, we have Willow Creek mine, which is in a low production mode. And more importantly, we do have a few other major projects in our portfolio which will assist us in depleting retiring capacities when the time comes, because Mkuju River project is one of the projects that we acquired back in 2011 and keep in our portfolio. We're not in a position to develop it in the current environment price, but this is something that will help us to fulfill retiring capacities as time comes by. And we do have exploration and development portfolio in US as well to ramp up and fulfill our plans there. I think it's important to mention that our Tier 1 assets are in Kazakhstan, and we will continue placing greater emphasis on expecting those mines to operate. In terms of total production, we produced 13 million pounds, and those came in through Kazakhstan mines in 2017. One of the items which people typically look at is your production profile. So this slide really is to provide you with overall understanding of how UraniumOne's production profile looks like. And few people are actually aware that back in 2008, UraniumOne was a junior mining company with just 2 million pounds in production. Today we have 13 million pounds, and over time we experienced about 5 times degrees increase in production, which was again due to strategic move to Kazakhstan, which helped us to increase our production and meet our targets. But as spot price was going down, we needed to look and revise our plans for Tier 2 assets in Australia and US, and really ramp those down to meet today's challenging environment. And in terms of our assets in Kazakhstan, I think it's important to mention that we've acquired them throughout a series of acquisitions starting from 2008 up until 2013, and that really drove the growth in our production. And since 2015, we became 4th largest uranium producer in the world. If you look at Kazakhstan today and wonder who are the players in Kazakhstan, I think some of the questions in the audience that we heard today were what are the resources by companies, what are the production numbers by companies. I think this slide clearly illustrates that today Uranium One is the second largest producer in Kazakhstan, and actually it's one of the first among foreign uranium producers in Kazakhstan. And this is just by comparative statistics of resources and production as of now. It's a bit a mixed bag if you look at the slide. Production is in measured and indicated, in U308 pounds, but attributable resources is in C1 and C2 categories. This is our internal estimates. In fact, thanks to Alex Boytsov for being a key person on monitoring this in terms of resources and production for us. This slide is really to illustrate production and capacity in Kazakhstan, because we have 6 mines in Kazakhstan which are operating today, and as you saw earlier, there are about 19 mines in Kazakhstan. So the portfolio we have is fairly a large portfolio of all the assets operating today in Kazakhstan, and this is to show how those assets have been developing over the last 10 years. And I would need to mention that most of the mines are relatively new mines that we have in our portfolio, with 4 out of 6 mines currently having operating at the permitted capacity. Only 2 mines have some residual capacity left, Khorasan and Harasan. And it's also kind of gives you, the chart on the right gives you an understanding which mines were first in production line, which mines came online later. But over the past 5 years, we have relatively stable production from Kazakhstan of around 13 million pounds on an attributable basis. This slide really is about resources and grade developments of our mines in Kazakhstan. I mean, this is technical panel, and some of the items typically technical people watch for is how the resource was developed, what are the grades were throughout the exploration and resource estimation. And we have, again, a very good experience in Kazakhstan, and the resources have actually tripled over 8 years period. And again, the early years from 2008 to 2010 were primarily due to acquisition and some resource improvement, but the biggest jump you can see on this chart that happened from 2012 to 2013 was primarily due to 3D modeling in resource estimations, which is more sophisticated and gave us a great increase in resources for both parties. And this is a summary for all the 6 GVs. And that increase didn't come with some decrease in grades. Grades remained consistently stable at 0.06, 0.08% of U3OH, which is phenomenal. And again, it just shows why Kazakhstan today is one of the major areas to mine uranium from. Going forward, I think it's also important to look at largest deposits worldwide and do some comparison and place where Uranium One mines are today. And this really shows that one of the largest deposits that are out there today in the world are in our portfolio. 2 mines, Karatown and Bastau, which are mining Budenovskaya deposit, really is the second largest deposit in the world. We also managed, when we looked at this carefully, to realize that Khorasan is another one which is in our portfolio and is 8th largest deposit in the world. So if you look at this picture overall and try to understand where the biggest mines and deposits today are in terms of top 10 operating mines, you can see that 3 of the mines that we have in our portfolio are among top 10. And I think in terms of measured and indicated resources, it's also quite significant for us to say that we have 3 mines among top 10, because those 3 mines represent about 60% of our total measured and indicated resources in our portfolio of Kazakhstan mines, which is very, very significant number for us. This slide really is to quickly give you an understanding of mineralization depth, and it's important to really realize that Kazakhstan mines are one of the deepest mines in the world, and what we have in portfolio, as you can see, 3 out of 6 mines actually have mineralization depth 600 to 700 meters in the earth. If you compare that with Australian and US mines, which are relatively shallow, The first question is, how can you mine that deep and still be one as a low-cost producer? Well, you have to realize that the drilling costs are different in different parts of the world, and based on what we've seen in US for our operations and what we've seen in Kazakhstan, there is about 2.5 times difference. So that makes possible to mine at such a depth in Kazakhstan and be cost competitive. And in terms of costs, I think we've seen this slide from previous presenter, but this is about to conclude on the same, that 5 out of 6 mines that we have in our portfolio are today in top 10 lowest cost mines in the world. And over the past 4 years, UraniumOne assets in Kazakhstan has actually improved operating cash cost by $5 to $6 a pound. When we reported our cash cost back in 2013, the number was close to $14, $15 a pound. So when you reduce your cost by $4 to $6 a pound, it really was a major success for mining team back there. And today we keep our operations intact just because of those additional incentives and additional cost improvements that were realized. But there were also other factors that helped to keep Kazakhstan mines, including our portfolio, intact. That was devaluation of Kazakhstan and USD dollars, which is well known. But despite outstanding performance of our mines in Kazakhstan, I think it's important to realize that today's spot price is not sustainable for anybody, because if you look at the total cost over life of mine, there are so many other costs that need to be accounted for and not always well understood when it comes to total cost of production. And unfortunately, we don't expect spot price to increase in short term, but we do have a strong view that spot price based on utilities requirements will become much hopefully higher after 2020, 2023. On the next slide, I think it's important to conclude also on health and safety. And health and safety has been quite a success for our operations in Kazakhstan. And this slide is really to illustrate how health and safety performance, total recordable incident rate, has improved over a 10-year period. And it's phenomenal because in 2016 we reported total recordable incident rate at around 0.03, which is really one incident for 2,400 employees. And ISL proves with the good statistics in health and safety that it is safe, reliable, and remains to be low-cost operations worldwide. And to put this in perspective, I think if you look at the mining sector in general, you will see much higher total recordable incident rates. I think they are ranging at 2.2, 2.5 based on MSHA US Mining Association statistics, but ISL mines are typically having much lower total recordable incident rates worldwide if you look at any other mines. So on closing remarks, I think it's quite good story for UraniumOne to present here with all the 6 mines we have in GV and development projects elsewhere. And you just seen how successful the story was for us to be in Kazakhstan. And yes, we have a strong portfolio of 6 operating mines in Kazakhstan. Yes, we're the world's largest and 4th most largest producer in the world today. But when it comes to what to expect from the future, I think I would like to conclude that at UraniumOne we will continue placing greater emphasis on our UraniumOne Tier 1 assets in Kazakhstan, and we'll watch for price improvement going forward and get our productions ready in US and Tanzania and elsewhere for ramp up when we have a better price of uranium in the market. With that in mind, I would like to thank you for your attention and open the floor for some questions. Thank you.
Okay, we do have time for questions.
So you mentioned $14 per pound production costs, cash costs, you said. What are your well-filled flushing costs, and what are your exploratory capex costs, and what are your confirmation drilling costs above and beyond on a per pound basis?
So if you look at our, the question is about our CAPEX cost per pound, just to repeat the question so audience can hear it. When we looked at our CAPEX expenditure profile over the last 5 to 10 years, what is important to realize that it has been changing. Over the past few years, we experienced CAPEX of around $5 to $6 a pound.
And your well-filled flushing costs?
I don't have that specific number in mind, but why don't you give us your contact and we can get back to you with that number.
Can I just follow up real quick? What about a listing? You know, Kazatomprom government entity is going to list via JP Morgan. You guys were listed in the mid-2000s. You think about coming back to the market?
Thanks for the question about our IPO plans. It's true, we've been listed as a junior mining company since 2002, and we delisted ourselves in 2015 because of strategic transaction. UraniumOne became part of a Saskatoon group of companies and is its international mining division, and we are privately owned today. We still maintain our public disclosure and post our financial statements due to our bonds that are listed in stock exchange. But in terms of our plans on IPO going forward, we do have that on our list to watch for, but there are no concrete plans at this stage.
I had a question about the currency. How much of the projections going forward are based on today's currency, and what's your prognosis for this?
That's a $1 billion question, I would say. It has been a roller coaster when it comes to USD dollar and tenge currency fluctuations. In fact, back in 2014, Kazakhstan tenge devalued 2 times compared to USD dollar, and it remains at that level with some upward trending seen recently over the past 6 to 8 months. So when we look at our mines, which forecasted price we take those that are published by any major banks. We don't have any other insight into this. This is really hard to put your finger on and say, yes, it's going to move downwards, it's going to move upwards with this magnitude. We don't know.
Can I ask you about Kazakhstan's intended cuts to production? So they announced a 10% cut for 2017, but I noticed on your graph your production seemed constant 2017 versus 2016, and now they've announced a 20% cut against whatever the plan was, but nobody knows what the plan is. So I just wondered how Kazakhstan's announced cuts are affecting you.
Oh, thanks. It's a great question, an expected one in the current environment. So any announcement that Kazatomprom is doing, those are their announcements, and just as I fleshed out at the beginning of the presentation, we are a JV partner on 6 mines, but Kazatomprom has much more mines than just those that we have them with the joint partnership. In terms of our production plans for years to come, we do operate on a budget basis. We do complete our budget process by end of Q1, so those plans are still being fleshed out.
Okay, if there's no more questions, thank you for a very informative speech.
So you've heard the previous speakers talking about unsustainable uranium price. So the operators had to look at ways to, improve their process, their activities, and that's what the next 2 talks will cover. We'll see how operators looked inside and try to optimize many of their processes. So I want to invite Noel Voykin. Noel is Director, Technology Group with CAMECO, and his talk is about uranium ISR at Inkai. Noel?
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'll share a bit of an overview of the Inkai uranium project. First, just a bit of my background with JV Inkai. I've been working with the operation for about 2.5 years in a corporate technical support role. In this role, I was a member of the